In the world of international diplomacy, things can change in an instant. One moment, leaders are shaking hands and making promises, and the next, the entire landscape can shift with a single decision or even a tweet. Especially with Donald Trump at the helm, unpredictability becomes the new normal. His approach to global affairs is anything but conventional, keeping allies and adversaries alike on their toes. Canadian officials were deep in negotiations, working tirelessly behind closed doors, hoping to ease the crushing tariffs the US had imposed. Every detail was scrutinized, every word carefully chosen as they tried to protect Canadian jobs and industries. Prime Minister Mark Carney had just met with President Trump, and, for a brief moment, optimism was in the air. There was a sense that progress was finally within reach, and that a breakthrough could be announced at any moment. But then, out of nowhere, a Truth Social post from Trump shattered everything. All trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. The message was blunt, public, and impossible to ignore. The reason? Not a policy dispute, not a failed negotiation, but a television ad from Canada. A single commercial, aired at the wrong time, was enough to derail months of hard work. The abrupt announcement sent shockwaves through markets and political circles, turning what should have been a routine dispute into a full-blown international incident. Investors panicked, politicians scrambled, and the media went into overdrive. Imagine being a Canadian negotiator, months of work, endless meetings, and careful diplomacy erased by a single social media post. The frustration and disbelief were palpable. The termination wasn't delivered through official channels, but as a public digital outburst for the world to see. The news spread instantly, leaving everyone scrambling to respond. Trump accused Canada of being fake and fraudulent, using the language of a reality TV feud, not the careful words of diplomacy. His accusations were personal, emotional, and designed to provoke. The world's largest trading relationship was suddenly hanging by a thread, all because the president felt personally insulted. Billions of dollars and countless jobs were now at risk, with no clear path forward. Everyone was left wondering what could possibly be in that ad to provoke such an explosive reaction. As the dust settled, one thing was clear. In the Trump era, even the smallest spark could ignite a diplomatic firestorm. So, what was in the ad? It wasn't an attack ad, but a stately message from Ontario's government. The ad featured a 1987 clip of Ronald Reagan warning about the dangers of trade wars and high tariffs. Using Reagan's words, the ad argued that free trade was a shared North American value. The visuals showed Canadian and American workers, highlighting economic integration. The message: Trump's tariffs threatened both nations' prosperity. The ad didn't insult Trump, it let Reagan do the talking. But, in 2004 himself, and 2000 wives, bar dot and fraud. Sensitive climate, even subtlety was seen as provocation. To Trump, it was a direct challenge, using a Republican icon against him. He called it a fraudulent use of Reagan's legacy, a fake message undermining his America First agenda. What Canada saw as a calm argument, Trump saw as a declaration of war. The controversy didn't end with Trump's outrage. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation quickly condemned the Canadian ad, accusing it of taking Reagan's words out of context and without permission. They argued the ad misrepresented Reagan's nuanced trade views. He'd also supported targeted tariffs in some cases. The foundation's objection added legitimacy to Trump's anger and threatened legal action. Now Canada faced criticism not just from Trump, but from Reagan's official guardians. The move backfired, putting Canada in an awkward position. The episode highlighted the risks of using historical figures in modern political battles. Canada's attempt to score a clever point had turned into a diplomatic headache. This blow-up was months in the making. Tensions had escalated since August, when the Trump administration imposed heavy tariffs on Canadian exports, citing national security. These tariffs hit Canadian industries hard, threatening thousands of jobs. Canada responded with diplomacy, hoping to persuade the US to reconsider. Prime Minister Carney's recent White House visit was a last-ditch effort for de-escalation, but trust had already eroded. Carney had warned the US was no longer a reliable partner. The Ontario government's Reagan ad was a strategic move in an ongoing fight, not the start of it. Canada had tried quiet diplomacy and public warnings. Now, it was appealing directly to Americans. Instead of building a bridge, the ad lit a fuse, igniting months of pent-up resentment. The result: A full-blown diplomatic crisis. After Trump's digital declaration, Canadian leaders didn't back down. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, whose government produced the ad, mocked Trump's reaction and stood by the message. Ford framed the ad as a defense of Canadian workers, dismissing Trump's anger as overblown. Prime Minister Carney echoed this defiance, expressing disappointment but vowing to stand up for Canada's interests. The unified response: Canada would not be bullied. Leaders made it clear that caving to Trump would be seen as weakness at home. Their statements were a rallying cry for Canadians, projecting strength and national pride. The message: we're disappointed, but we're not scared. Canada's leaders turned Trump's outrage into a moment of unity. The country was ready to weather the storm. To truly understand the conflict, you have to see both sides, each with its own history, priorities, and sense of national pride. The US and Canada may share a border, but their perspectives on this issue couldn't be more different. From Trump's perspective, this was about fairness. He believed the US had been taken advantage of in trade deals for years, and it was time to stand up for American workers and industries. Tariffs were, in his view, a tool to force better terms and respect from trading partners. He saw them as leverage, a way to rebalance relationships he felt were lopsided. The Reagan ad, featuring a beloved American president, felt to Trump like a foreign country using an American icon to undermine him on his own turf. For Trump, ending talks was a justified response to what he saw as disrespect and interference in American politics. It was a way to show strength and draw a line in the sand. For Canada, this was about survival and principle. The stakes were high, not just economically, but in terms of national dignity and independence. The Canadian economy is deeply tied to the US, and the tariffs were seen as an unprovoked attack on their livelihoods and way of life. Canadians viewed themselves as fair, reliable partners, and the sudden tariffs as arbitrary and unjustified. They felt blindsided by a neighbor they had long trusted. The Reagan ad was a last-ditch effort to appeal to American values, hoping to remind the US of their shared history and friendship. Trump's fury only confirmed Canadian fears. The US was no longer a predictable ally, and the rules of the relationship had suddenly changed. For Canada, this was a fight for sovereignty, respect, and equal partnership on the world stage. It was about standing up for themselves, even against a giant. In the end, both sides saw themselves as defending their core interests, but their visions of fairness and respect were worlds apart. The immediate fallout was economic uncertainty. Markets reacted with volatility, and investors grew nervous as headlines warned of escalating tensions. The sense of unpredictability rippled through financial districts and small towns alike. Businesses on both sides of the border faced chaos. Canadian lumber companies and American auto parts factories suddenly didn't know what the future held. Supply chains that once ran smoothly were now tangled in red tape and confusion. Tariffs made goods more expensive for consumers in both countries. Everyday essentials, from groceries to cars, saw price hikes almost overnight, leaving families scrambling to adjust their budgets. Canada's likely retaliation would raise prices on US products too. Shoppers found their favorite brands suddenly out of reach, and businesses struggled to keep shelves stocked. This tit-for-tat trade war meant families paid more for everyday items. The impact was felt at the checkout counter and around the dinner table, as parents worried about stretching every dollar. Millions of jobs tied to cross-border trade were now at risk. Workers feared layoffs, and communities dependent on trade braced for tough times ahead. The breakdown threatened not just economies, but trust. Long-standing partnerships between companies and even friendships between colleagues were put to the test. The US-Canada relationship, once a model of cooperation, was now in public crisis. Political leaders exchanged sharp words, and the world watched as negotiations stalled. The feud sent a message to the world: even the closest allies weren't safe from unpredictable policy. Other nations grew wary, wondering if they might be next. When neighbors fight, the whole global neighborhood feels the instability. Trade routes shift, travel slows, and uncertainty spreads far beyond two countries' borders. Rebuilding trust could take years, long after the dispute is resolved. It's not just about signing new deals, but about healing relationships and restoring confidence. The cost of this conflict was far more than dollars and cents. It was measured in lost opportunities, strained communities, and the challenge of finding common ground again. So, what's next? In the short term, the outlook is bleak. With talks terminated, tariffs will likely remain, hurting both economies. Canada refuses to be bullied. The Trump administration refuses to negotiate after feeling disrespected. The result: A stalemate where both sides lose, but neither will blink. A breakthrough will require a major political shift or economic crisis. Back-channel diplomacy might quietly resume, but public hostility makes progress tough. For everyday people, this means prolonged uncertainty, higher prices, job fears, and damaged cross-border ties. The sense of being friendly neighbors has been shaken. The future of the US-Canada relationship depends on shifting focus from personal insults to shared interests. For now, the path forward is foggy, and only renewed diplomacy can restore trust and stability.